Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. I'm Laura Kittmer, Communications Director at Wine Growers British Columbia, and thank you so much for joining us for today's discussion on the 2024 BC Wine Vintage, and of course, for your ongoing support of BC Wines and our passionate and resilient wine community. We would like to begin by acknowledging that this webinar is being hosted from Kelowna, located on the traditional unceded territory of the Syilx Okanagan Nation. We respectfully recognize the Syilx people's connection to this land, their cultural heritage, and their ongoing contributions to this community. Today's session will provide key insights into the evolving BC wine industry, focusing on the 2024 vintage, expectations for the upcoming crafted in BC wines, and the availability of 100% BC wines in the market. We'll walk through tools and resources created by Wine Grower BC to help retailers, restaurateurs, and industry professionals understand the crafted in BC positioning and effectively share the story behind the 2024 vintage, promoting local BC wineries. We will then hear firsthand from a panel of BC wineries about their recovery efforts from the freeze events last winter and the steps they're taking to build a more resilient and sustainable future for the BC wine industry. We are thrilled to have Kurtis Kolt, sommelier, wine director, and consultant here with us live from Vancouver to moderate the panel discussion. And at the end of the session, we'll open the floor for questions. Please submit your questions using the Q&A function. And while we recognize there are many topics of interest right now, we kindly ask that you keep your questions focused on today's discussion to respect everyone's time. The webinar will be recorded, and a link to the recording will be shared with all attendees afterwards. So thanks again for taking the time to join us. And with that, we'll get started. Here's a very high-level timeline of the events this past year leading up to where we are now, to give you some context before we dive into the panel discussion. So as you know, the BC wine industry, like retail and hospitality, has faced many challenges these past few years, but most recently the severe freeze event last winter, which caused a devastating 95% crop loss for the 2024 vintage. A few vineyards in the interior dodged the cold and were able to produce a small quality crop, while most vineyards saw no production at all. Luckily, the maritime regions were unaffected, and wineries on Vancouver Island, the Gulf Islands, and Fraser Valley were able to produce a healthy crop for the 2024 vintage. So we'll see some of those VQA wines coming onto the market soon. On another positive note, despite the freeze causing significant crop loss, actual vine death was not as bad as feared, with about 20% of vine loss. So while there is a lot of replanting happening, many vines are on track and expected to recover and produce again in 2025. However, no grapes in 2024 means no wine, and therefore no income from that vintage for many wineries. So to support them, a temporary solution was created, allowing wineries to bring out-of-province grapes or juice for 1 year. The 2024 Vintage Relief and Support Replacement Program was announced by government in July 2024, with the goal to help keep local wineries open and employees working until the vines recover. Wine Grower BC formed an industry task group in the fall to discuss and put forward marketing, merchandising, and communication recommendations to support the introduction of crafted in BC wines produced under this replacement program into the market. And from these recommendations, Wine Growers BC developed a communications plan and toolkit to help position and differentiate these crafted in BC wines from BCVQA wines, highlighting that while they include out-of-province grapes, they are made by the same skillful hands and with the same commitment to quality that trade, consumers, and the like expect from our BC wineries. So while BCVQA wines remain the gold standard, guaranteeing 100% BC grown grapes, the crafted in BC wines represent the innovation and resilience of BC wineries as they navigate this transitional period with the full commitment to returning to 100% BC wine production as soon as possible. For some, that might be as soon as 2025. For others that have to replant their vineyards, that could be in the next 1, 2, 3 years. So I'll take a couple moments here to outline the resources we currently have available and where our communications plan is at. Okay. Everyone can see our webpage here. No. Oh, you cannot. I will just re-share my screen. Okay, can everyone see the webpage now? Perfect. All right. Okay, so we've created this this webpage here on winebc.com to house the communications plan, the recommendations of the Vintage 2024 Industry Task Group, and the communication materials we've developed to date. So that includes a boilerplate on what is crafted in BC. It is a temporary positioning created to support BC wineries during the challenges of the 2024 vintage. It is not a designation or certification, but a messaging approach that highlights the industry's resilience and adaptability during this transitional period. We've also made it clear here the role of Wine Growers BC. We do not package, sell, or shelve any wines, but we work with our wineries and partners to support all BC wineries and ensure consistent and transparent messaging and communications during this time, with the goal, of course, as I mentioned before, to fully return to 100% BC wine production as soon as possible. We also have a couple links here to some articles on the state of the BC wine industry and the 2024 vintage relief and support crafted in BC wines, as published in the Quarterly Pour industry newsletter and then on the Wines of BC Taste and Terroir blog. We have created, developed universal industry messaging with a customizable industry paragraph or hero messaging that wineries can adapt and personalize. Also really helpful for trade and retailers as well. We have our key messaging and message map available here with some background information on the past year. And then the shelf space recommendations that comes directly from the industry task group. As far as stakeholder communications, we've created tailored one-pagers with key messaging and positioning for our target audiences. Here, for example, is our one-pager for retailers. So it gives an overview of the Crafted in BC positioning and provides guidance on merchandising, product placement, and key messaging to effectively communicate about these wines to your customers. This is also a great tool to share with your staff. It highlights that BC wineries still have 100% BC wine to sell, whether from past vintages or a small 2024 crop. So a reminder that these wines will coexist in the market, which we'll talk about with the wineries a little bit later. And so we've got key messaging, what retailers can do, what retailers should know, resources available. And then we've also got a page here for the shelf space recommendations from the task group. And then information for consumers on the wines. Just quickly, here is our one-pager for trade. So similar to the retailer one-pager, it's got a similar overview, the key messages, what trade professionals can do, what trade professionals should know, resources available. And then we've included a menu listing guidance for restaurants to help you sort of position the wines on your menus, and just keep that communication and very transparent with the crafted in BC wines and the BCVQA wines. And then we've got a section here for FAQs on the initiative for consumers, for wineries and trade, and FAQs on the BC industry's economic impact and future sustainability. As I mentioned, we will be recording this webinar, and a link to the webinar will be available here on the page. And we're working on a media release to send out prior to April 1st. The release will introduce the limited time Crafted in BC wines and celebrate the launch of the 2024 BCVQA and 100% BC wines released this spring. So stay tuned for that. Keep an eye open for that media release coming out. It will also be available on this webpage. And with that, I'll stop sharing my screen and I will pass it on. There we go. I'll pass it on to Kurtis Kolt to introduce our panel and dive into our panel discussion portion of the webinar. Thank you.
All right. Thanks so much, Laura. Thanks, everyone, for having me. We may have a little bit of back and forth, so panelists, you're more than welcome to unmute if you're in a quiet place. That would be awesome. We already had a question come through. Just so you know, we know what a lot of the questions are. So we are going to be putting a lot of information out here. So if you have something that's kind of top of mind right now, likely we are going to be covering it. So just kind of, rest assured, we all have had these same questions as well, and continue to have them. So yeah, we're going to try to get to everything. This is a very exciting time, and I think that we can't lose sight of that. We all know why we are here, and why this program has been introduced. It is, quite impressive. As we know, regulation and policy don't exactly move fast, but the industry and the government have moved fast to ensure that we aren't going to skip a beat, that we are going to have a vintage that, of course, looks a little different for 2024. This means that the BC wineries throughout the regions can be strong. They can have tasting rooms open. This also affects broader, of course, all tourism, hotels, restaurants, and everything. And so these wines are important. These wines are exciting. I'm working on a couple of pieces, and so I've had editorial pieces, and so I've had the opportunity to try probably a few dozen of these wines from all around, some of them from winemakers that you see here. Super impressive. One thing that I really like that I'm seeing from these wines is that, the AVAs that we are seeing, that we are getting fruit from in Washington and Oregon and California, plus GIs in Ontario. We're not getting leftover fruit. We're not getting leftover juice. We're getting some really premium fruit. And so that's what's really exciting. I like to think of this as, having one of your favorite musical artists, one of your favorite bands, covering a song by one of your other favorite musical artists or bands. Imagine if Dave Paterson at Tantalus got to play around with Ontario Riesling. Imagine if Sev from Le Vieux Pin got to play around with premium AVA Syrah from Washington State. What will they do with it? We now know. They now know. And so this is quite exciting. This is all about supporting local. We know supporting local is more important than ever nowadays. One quick thing, we're not going to get into tariffs because the tariff scenario has changed, I think, about 4 times today alone. Just one thing that we just do want to clarify, these are local wines. They are not subject to tariffs. These are grapes and fruit. If it came from the US, they were bought and paid for last year. These are Biden grapes. We were when we brought them in. And so they are not going to be subject to tariffs. So just to kind of get that question out of the way, and again, to hammer it home, and a lot of this is going to be about messaging from us to you, but then from you to your colleagues and to your guests and to your customers. This messaging is in no way a shell game or trying to do any smoke and mirrors. This is genuine, transparently what's going on. The big questions, well, are the labels going to be very, very clear, and transparent about where the fruit comes from? Yes, they are. Everything that I've seen, different people have labeled at different times. Some we didn't know if the state was going to be allowed, but on the back label, there are descriptions of where the fruit comes from. Most I've seen have, marquee. This is from Oregon fruit. This is from Ontario fruit. Everyone, these brands, their wines and their reputation are very important to them as well. So they have just as much of a vested interest, if not more, than anyone viewing today, at ensuring that people know what they are getting here. But the point is, these are local wines. By supporting these wines, you are supporting local. Just as when you are supporting your local craft breweries, that may be getting hops, that may be getting malt and other ingredients from abroad, outside of these are still considered, these are local craft beers, and so on. So we are going to get started. So we have Severin Pent from Le Vieux Pin and La Stella wineries in the South Okanagan. Derek Conte-Cannon is Director of Winemaking and Production for our Terra Wines. Few wineries, medium and big, under his belt. Lots to do. We have Charlie Baesslar. He is from Corcelettes in the mighty Similkameen Valley. David Paterson from Tantalus Vineyards up in Kelowna. Michael Bartier, new guy to the industry. We'll see if he could figure it out. He is, of course, a legend around these parts from Bartier Brothers Vineyard and Winery. And we have Lauren Skinner, second generation co-proprietor of Painted Rock Estate Winery in Skaha. We are going to hear from all of them. So we are going to start, Severin, with you. For the first part of this discussion, we are not going to be talking quite yet about the crafted in BC wines. There's a lot of questions and definitely some myths out there about the future of BC wine, where we are going. I can tell you right now, VQA is not going anywhere. The program is not being wiped out. It's not being adjusted, anything like that. This is a one-time only solution for us to bridge this challenging time. So we're going to go around the table, figuratively, right now, and find out basically how each of these producers, how they are faring through this, what their vineyard looks like, what the state of their business is, and what they are looking at for this coming season, replanting, things like that. So Severin, Le Vieux Pin and La Stella, how you doing?
Good. Thank you all for being here. It's a great pleasure to be able to talk about all this with all of you in the industry. So basically, Le Vieux Pin and La Stella together, we farming about 70 acres when everything is in production, and we lost about 26%. So we pulled them off, but the lesson from those big winter events was that we were able to identify even more clearly through the work that we've done in the past and precise viticulture, which blocks were the coldest, where it was the warmest. And so in the replanting guidelines that we're putting through the company, we are going to, for example, at Le Vieux Pin, the Syrah, they're gone. but we're going to replace with some Cabernet Franc, and then we have vineyards in the south because we have 9 different vineyards throughout the south of Okanagan. In the south, in Osoyoos, where it's a lot warmer, we're going to put the Syrah there. We're also going to put more Sangiovese there because the Sangiovese at La Stella also got a little bit hit by the cold. So we're not abandoning Syrah, not at all. It's the wines that are coming from those terroirs in the south are just so beautiful, and that we couldn't imagine abandoning Syrah. So from this opportunity that we had to bring some grapes from the States, we brought a few varietals that we were not working with before. It was super interesting, and that gave us, because the wines were turned out extremely good, we are going to try and plant some of those varietals, like I'm thinking Cinsault. And then we did bring some Grenache and Mourvèdre. Unfortunately, our climate is not good at all for those varietals, even on a normal winter. But they did some beautiful wines that we're going to be blending with some Syrah to do like Syrah, Grenache, Mourvèdre at Le Vieux-Pin. So some very good wine came out of this, and then we are replanting. We're going to be adapting our vineyard management practices. We did some experiment with geotextile this winter. We did some experiment with healing as well. And so just trying to, there's no real solution to adaptation to cold climate, like to the freezing temperature that we got. I think all researchers are on deck to try and find some solutions that we can all work with. So did I cover everything? Maybe
Yeah,
not,
you
but
are. Yeah, we've solved everything. It's fantastic. Cinsault, very exciting. There's this is kind of the lemonade season, turning lemons into lemonade, and it's really exciting just seeing how and what is being replanted around, and that it's not often in an industry, not that you wanted to come across this way, but that to get that pause to reconsider everything and to go back in. And so, Sev, before I move on, I just want to clarify that Le Vieux-Pin, La Stella, you're open for business this year.
Yep.
The way things are going, we are likely anticipating a stronger tourism season than we've seen in the last little bit. Tasting rooms are both going to be open. You got stuff going on, pouring your wine.
So we're going to be open 7 days a week. We're opening April 1st officially, but we have people pruning on site at La Stella. So if you pop in, they're going to come in and help. We are ready. We are still by appointment, but we're going to welcome walk-in as well, just to make sure that we can accommodate a lot of people and that want to come and try the wines. And we're lots of staff, and we're going to be open. So yeah.
Fantastic. Charlie Baesslar at Corcelettes in the Similkameen Valley. You and your wife Jessie and family. So family-run winery. The Similkameen is already a place of extremes. The landscape is a stunner. Look at your vineyard behind you. What's the problem, buddy? It looks nice and healthy. I think we're all good to go there. I love your wines. Super exciting. Looking forward to the later part of the chat to talk about what you have with the Crafted program. But for now, what is the state of Corcelettes? How are you hit? How are you adapting? And what's next?
Thanks, Curtis. Pleasure to be here and represent the Similkameen. We've been particularly busy in the Similkameen. So to Laura's timeline, we'd already endured quite a few challenges in the winter of 22 into 23. And so our 23 crop had already been, greatly reduced across the valley. So compounded by the following event that took a lot of our rehab efforts, I almost went wasted in a way. So all the rehab and retraining work we had done following the first cold event was further compounded by the second. And so it kind of prompted this more aggressive replant program in our world. we had purchased and planted over almost 20 years 5 different vineyards in the Similkameen. And when you're dealing with inner plants and looking at vines that are between the ages of 15 and 20 years of age, those inner plant efforts get harder and harder as those vines get older and older. So it's a combination of different rootstocks and just such a spread and maturity of vines. So for that reason, we certainly are really excited to have doubled down and replanted 80% of our vineyards. We did about 24 acres last year with a little bit more patchwork to do this year. With that, though, has come a entire new approach. And, again, because we acquired these different lots over this 15, 18-year period, it's allowed us to rewrite our vineyard maps based on all of our learnings, having farmed this valley for that period of time. So where one farm may have had 3 different varietals, it's now, identified that site just does so much better, for example, for Cabernet or for Pinot or whatever it may be. So we had a great opportunity to rewrite our vineyard maps using soil characteristics, precision farming techniques. So GPS everything, new irrigation installs, really like a complete rewrite of those vineyards. It's obviously posing some extreme challenges in terms of our rotation of production. And so there's a massive interruption. It's kind of like a vineyard sabbatical with no pay, if you will. But our vineyards have learned a lot and are going to be better than ever. So the visual you see behind me, I think it's probably about 3 years old now. This would have been likely vintage of 22. So yeah, I mean, obviously the vineyard production side has been really challenging. We've really had to reinvest and do better. Ultimately, we've learned a lot. Resilience or agricultural risk can never be eliminated, but certainly there are things that we can do to manage some of that risk. With sustainability comes a level of mechanization, which comes with an infrastructure, a level of vineyard infrastructure that we've now implemented. We are growing bush vines, so 20 acres that we planted last year are with a new bush vine technique that we've mulched in straw. And so we hope for those 2 impacts alone. And in fact, we've now got a season of data to really kind of get excited about what that straw mulch looks like. And so there's lots of things that we're excited about having done. Our hand's been forced. So to your point, making lemonade from lemons is certainly what we've had to do. So nothing's changed a lot in terms of our varietal or our portfolio. We've certainly planted varietals like Syrah, to Steph's point, which are certainly a little bit more delicate to the highest, rockiest, steepest sites of our properties. And frankly, really excited because didn't have a choice, and now I've already spent the money, so I'm also get excited about the work that we've done.
And people visiting Corcelettes this spring, summer, fall, what can they expect?
Well, we're really excited to host more people. Obviously, we're not without red wines. We'll talk a little bit about some of our fresher wines we'll release in the spring in the later segment, but we're super excited to, get, people here on site, talk about some of these new farming practices, seeing them in real time. Our wine shop is super thrilled to open up come mid-April and to drive a very exciting, as authentic Similkameen experience with great wine. So look for that.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Dave Paterson, GM and winemaker at Tantalus Vineyards. A lot of us know specialize on Riesling, Chardonnay, and Pinot Noir. Little pink, little bubble here and there. What's the state of Tantalus? And I think probably the biggest question that is on all of our minds, the old vines Riesling, your old Riesling vines, the ones that came over from cuttings from St. Urbanshof in Germany. How are the old vines? Do we still have them?
Thanks, Curtis. Yeah, I mean, the state of the union's quite good here at Tantalus overall. In some ways, there's been a bit of a blessing and a curse in our area since the 1819 winter. We've sustained some sort of winter damage up on the East Kelowna slopes. And so we've been used to dealing with these winters for quite a while. And in fact, 2018 was really the last time I got a full crop. 22 was pretty close. and then we got hit again. But because in response to that, we've been hilling up around our vines basically since then, and got in even more aggressively into making sure that we're protecting the graft unions on all of our plants. So I'm very happy to say that everything is still alive. And in fact, we got really good growth last year, just very little grapes. But we only lost what we would normally see from an older block, about 1 or 2% of the vines, which would happen in most years, regardless of winter, just with disease and just the age of the vines. So I'm expecting not 100% of a crop this year, but a decently sustainable size of crop, maybe 60 to 70% of a normal crop, seeing that we are basically through the winter here, and all the good wood that's out there that regenerated from last year. So we're very, very happy, and the old vines are still doing what they need to do.
All right, and this coming season, Tantalus, it's nice. It's the proximity to Kelowna is quite handy, and so tourism is a big part of your business. You looking forward to the season? You expecting to see a bump?
Yeah, no, I mean, I really hope so. The last couple of years weren't fantastic for tourism and throughout the Okanagan. I expect that the sentiment of Support Canada is going to really help us all, and bring a lot more tourism, local tourism, hopefully, more wine club members and more following for all BC wine. So really hoping for that. I think also what tourism or tourists can expect from Tantalus and a lot of other producers around the Okanagan is some of the strongest BC wines ever made came from the 22 vintage. So some of the very best 22 vintage wines are going to be on the market. And so you're going to see, we'll talk about them later, these replacement wines in these tasting rooms, but you're also going to see some of the very best that BC's ever produced in a lot of these tasting rooms. So it's a wonderful season for tourists to come to BC.
Right, fantastic. I first met Derek years ago. I think Derek, you were at the helm of Inniskillen. He stick handled some of those incredible, legendary Dark Horse Vineyard wines there. Now you wear a few more hats with Arterra. What's the maybe just first of all, kind of the scope of what you do, what your role is, and what the state of your wineries. Much of them are now historic wineries in BC. You have some very old vines and so on. So maybe just a little bit about you, and then what the wineries are looking at these days.
Sure, yeah. No, thanks, Kurtis. Yeah, it's been a while. I remember the first time, I think it was in Vancouver. We did a little TV show down on CBC or something like that. It was.
We did, yeah,
But
that's right.
for myself, director of winemaking and production at Arterra, oversee some of our bottle lines, our maintenance and warehouse, but we also oversee the estates that we have. I've been around in the industry for 26 years now, I guess. BC for 21. So yeah, lots of changes over the years, lots of different vintages we've seen. We've seen different climates in the last number of years, really. For us at Arterra, we experienced sort of the same thing that Charlie and Severin have seen. Syrah didn't go very well through the winter. We did a lot of field work, a lot of study. How do we prune our vines to get them back to where we need to get them to have a quick recovery, to get back to 25 vintage, to get back to full crop as quickly as possible. Last year, I believe we did about 90,000 bud dissections to verify all our blocks and all our vineyards, plotted it all out. Like Charlie, we use a lot of GIS, GPS to map everything and to quantify. And then, you look at it, yes, we did have the frost event, but you got to always look for the silver lining somewhere. And I always look at it as, well, some of our plantings that we have are from 98, 99, getting a little older. Were they actually in the right spot? Was it what we wanted? So now we've reevaluated the vineyards. Where are we going to plant? What are we going to plant? So over the next 5 years, we're basically replanting 400 acres. and with a few dollars invested into that to get us where we want to be in the future. So, from that side, I'm kind of really excited. We could plant, like we're trying out some different varieties, which will pop up on the market in a couple of years. But yeah, we're kind of moving through, and we're here to continue the growth and to promote BC wines.
And are the different winery projects you have, are we just going to see, as you said, moving forward, replanting, just kind of general, smaller kind of like shifts with all of them? Are any of the brands going through kind of a bigger, particularly sweeping change, or is this just more kind of broad across?
More of a broad look at the portfolio, look at what consumers are looking for these days, and then just move around. If we had, say, for example, Sablon down south by Asturias, probably not, it's a little warm for that down there, and that was an idea that we had back in the mid to late 90s. So let's revamp it, let's move it a bit more further north and put some more Syrah in a better spot down south. So just more of a shuffle, and try to, the sort of the concept still the same.
All right, cool. Mr. Bartier, you have a good amount of history making wine in British Columbia, from Fraser Valley, throughout the Okanagan, up on Hawthorne Mountain, and so on. So you've done a little bit of everything, and sometimes you would think that you've seen it all, and it turns out you hadn't. So Bartier Brothers, you also had some historic vineyards, the Sakara vineyard that you purchased years ago now from that family that had some old vines. I know that you have an exciting new hire vineyard wise. We can get into that. So what is the state of Bartier? How's your brother doing?
Who? He's doing great. He's in Calgary. He's working his day job today.
All right, fantastic. So so what's the scoop with Bartier Brothers?
Well, Charlie pointed out, this is before last winter, and actually I remember it really well, like it was yesterday, December 22nd, 2022. I was out in the vineyard, at 2 a.m. hoping to turn on the wind machine because it was minus 25 degrees Celsius, and turn on the wind machine to, churn up an inversion and warm up the vineyards. But it didn't work. There was no inversion to churn up. So it was really cold. And for us, that's where the damage started. And so we only had 25% of our crop in vintage 2023. And that happens in farming. It's farming. And we had a good crop in 2022. We had a full crop in 2022, which was fantastic. That was a very good vintage, and we had that to fall back on. 2023 light crop, and then last January 2024, we really got hit hard. So in our vineyards, we farm at the Sakara vineyard. We have about 6 hectares, and then we farm about another 50 hectares, and pretty much, and they're all close by. They're all in the neighborhood, and pretty well across the board. We had very similar numbers. We had 0 crop. We didn't harvest anything in 2024, and we did end up, between the two vintages, 2023 damage and the 2024 damage, we ended up losing about 40% of our acreage in vine damage that just had to be pulled out and replanted. So a little bit of that was replanted last year, and we'll be replanting the remainder of that this year. And we saw an opportunity to make better vineyards. We are very proud of our vineyards. They're fantastic, but I'll be honest, of course, they weren't perfect. And so we saw the opportunity to, take what we knew about the vineyards and improve them. Some of that was, have blocks that were more homogeneous on themselves. So we shifted the boundaries of certain blocks. We changed varieties. Like Severin, Syrah is gone for us. It performed so badly in the cold that we couldn't rationalize bringing that back. Unfortunately, again, I love Syrah. So that was a real heartbreaker. We lost Semillon. However, we've replanted Semillon, we've replanted Merlot, and Chardonnay. My God, that performed like a champion. We didn't get crop on that last year, but the vines look fantastic. And in fact, I'm looking out at them right now, and they're beautiful. And it's going to be a good Chardonnay harvest this year. Cabernet Franc sustained some damage, but it's alive. So we'll have Cabernet Franc again this year. And everything that we're replanting on its own roots. We have very light soils here. They're very sandy, so that's not much of a risk as far as phylloxera is concerned. We can manage the phylloxera. And the other thing that we've done is we've looked at our farming practices, because I'm not convinced that this was, a 1 in 1,000 or even a 1 in 100-year event. This is going to happen again. It's climate change, and I suspect it's going to happen again, and it'll probably happen more frequently. So we're not just going to wait for it to come to us. Like a lot of other vineyards, we've tried a few risk mitigation strategies, and what we've arrived at is hilling, mounding up soil over top of canes that we have lying on the ground that come from the, that they're still connected to the root system of the trunk. And that is an insurance policy. If we can still prune the vines as we would normally would, and if we get a catastrophic cold event like we did in 2024 January, then we have that insurance policy, which is buried underground, that we can bring up and retrain new trunks. We won't get a full crop that year, but we'll get a significant crop that year. And more importantly, we'll have vines that are alive, that we don't have to wait 4 years to have to replant them.
Sure. And with the tasting room, so, having a couple of challenging years in a row, you open for business. Can people come and see you this coming year?
Yeah, we open up in the weekends later on this month, and then full time at the Easter weekend. And as you rightfully pointed out, there is wine to sell. We have, we've just bottled the 2022 reds, and that's been fantastic that we have that we had that inventory. Very good vintage, and there was a good amount of it, so we have that for sale. And then we're going to run out our 2023 whites that we had. They're getting to the end of their inventory, the end of their stock, and we'll be moving into the fruit that we brought in from out of province.
All right. Cool. Awesome. Lauren Skinner from Painted Rock Estate winery, perched there on the Skaha bench. We'll get to it later on. You have a very interesting position here. You opted at the winery not to take part in the replacement program. However, you were part of the task force to kind of advise on the program and help develop it. You have been a vocal champion of it, and of course, there's a lot of noise, there's a lot of myths out there, and you've been kind of the clear voice coming through. So thank you for that, and we'll get into that a little bit later on, but this initial part of the discussion is just as relevant to you. You have a pretty fantastic site at Painted Rock Estate Winery. It's quite compact. And how was it affected last year?
Yeah, so I mean, sorry, excuse me, everyone. So we've got 27 acres under vine. We're on about a 56-acre bench, and that is all of Painted Rock. So that is our one vineyard. We've always grown everything from there. The interesting thing was when we bought the property in 2004, it was raw land, and we actually started from scratch. So we had some of the opportunities that are being presented now. The other wineries are looking at their vineyards holistically. We kind of had that opportunity at that very beginning. And really the last couple of years have proven to be a litmus test on whether or not the analysis we'd done then would be correct and would, serve us. So there was a few things that we did that, we are extremely thankful for. They have allowed us to survive these events, and not only survive, but thrive in small ways. So, from initial contouring plans and an analysis of different varieties and different locations for temperatures, it means that in the 2022 frost that Michael spoke about, we didn't suffer any damage. And we took that hope and confidence into the 2024 frosts and hoped and prayed and did all the things that the same would be true from that. And while last year we didn't have much of a crop, we did have some, particularly in our Chardonnay and some of the reds, enough for us to make about what will be about 200 cases of rosé and 200 cases of Chardonnay. By no means a traditional vintage from Painted Rock. There will be no red wines, but the blessing at that time was walking to the vineyard and realizing that all of the plants were alive. So that was really validating in terms of what we had done in the initial planting and the initial structure, be it the vine orientation, planting east-west, be it the contouring to remove frost pockets and the vine selection. We had a little dip in 2023 of the Syrah based on that 2022 cold, but it was pretty minimal. And while we've got a little bit of infill replanting to do due to just general, as Severine's, as David, I believe you said, every couple of years, there's 1% to 2% vine death. So we've got a little bit to take care of in Syrah, but yeah, we're lucky, and we're not looking a gift horse in the mouth on this one, and we're grateful.
Yeah, and the winery's always been good about releasing wines when they're ready, not necessarily the moment they're put in bottles. So I'm thinking that you do have wine to sell, and people can come and see you this summer.
Very much so. We will be open. Our Chardonnay and Rosé will be released to the club this May, June. I do not know how much they will absorb. If there's any left, it will go to the tasting room. But the great thing is I'm just on 2021s for reds, so I have a full cellar of 22 and 23. We have lots of red wines, which is the dominant part of our portfolio anyways. And at the end of the day, it just ends up being a little more strategy on my side of things and a little more work for me, but hopefully those visiting the tasting room don't feel much of a difference on their side of things. And it means that my team gets to get creative about what we can offer on the patio when you may not be looking for a big, bold red wine in 37-degree weather. Let's find something delicious to refresh you while you're sitting out there.
All right, awesome. Fantastic. Okay, so we're going to get into what I know a lot of people are particularly here for, the crafted in BC wines. And so, as mentioned at the top by Laura, this is just a recommended moniker for a category. This is not a legal term. This is not something that is going on labels. This is not an effort to mislead people. This is not an effort to dupe the consumer into thinking that they are drinking BC juice. We had to come up with something, a way that people can find these wines. And so this is a recommendation. It's all it is. If you don't love it, hey, as long as you're selling the wines and waving the flag, we're stoked about that. But we do need an overall category and a name for it. And crafted in BC was the one that definitely rose to the top to represent what we have here. Just in the way, like I said at the beginning, BC craft beer. We know what that is, though the ingredients come from abroad. The labels will state where the fruit is coming from, but all of us in attendance here and our colleagues, it is up to us to communicate the story, what these wines are. We needed to have BC. We needed to have local, as a heading here so that people could find these wines. People are not going to be going into a wine store or liquor store and go through every single country and section hoping to see a local winery name that they want to support local. They want to support our local wineries. They want to keep money. They want to keep supporting our economy here. They want to be able to find these wines that are made in British Columbia. So these wines are crafted in BC. That is the heading. it would be great, obviously, if we can, be more specific, a little bit more clear, but you can't really have a big sign over a few shelves in a store that says crafted in BC from Washington and or Oregon and or California or maybe Ontario grapes. We had to have something compact, and so people who are looking for these wines will find them in many places under the crafted in BC moniker, so that they know where they can go to support local and find these wines. Laura, I just want to kind of check in with you. There was a brief question just before we talk with everyone. Just curious on the pickup. Are we seeing, stores and retailers? Of course, these wines aren't going to be released, across the board until April 1st, but I'm sure you're getting kind of some hints. Are we going to see that term around, or do you know of a lot of retail spots that are going to be employing this, or is it still kind of a wait and see how loud this phrase is going to be?
I think it really comes down to the intake of the 2020 of the spring releases. We had a meeting with the BCL a few weeks back, and they've already opened up their submission, their applications for VQA wine and crafted in BC wines. And I know they're certainly looking at having a section for crafted in BC wines. They received lots of VQA submissions and lots of crafted in BC submissions. So I think a lot of the retailers, if you're talking about retailers right now, are sort of waiting to see what comes in. As we know, these wines are going to transition in, they are going to transition out. So just in how that looks, and that's one of the questions I know you're going to be asking the panelists very soon, is what are we going to expect from BC wineries as far as your plans in putting out your VQA wines alongside the crafted in BC? What's the timeline? Like, what can we expect from that? And I know our Save on Foods partners, they will be they've opened up their submissions now for BC wine, both VQA and crafted in BC. So we're certainly going to see all of these BC wines hitting the shelf very soon.
Yeah. Okay. Fantastic. I'm just going to, because I know we're not going to have time for questions a lot at the end, but I just want to tackle someone who's asking if the label has to show where the grapes are sourced, and is it possible to blend from different countries and regions? You cannot say that it is made from BC fruit, because these wines are not made from BC fruit. You aren't allowed to use AVAs, as far as I understand, a particular term. But what we are seeing are vineyard names and state or province names. Just a little example here. I happen to have one here. So this is Tantalus Riesling. You see right there, Ontario. Oh, they're made in Ontario. Grown in Ontario. So very clear. And on the second point, I happen to have Joie Farms Noble Blend here. If you look at the bottom, it says Pacific Northwest Edition. And on the back, it actually talks about fruit coming from Washington State, Summerland, and Naramata. Which is quite interesting for a wine like that. And realistically, if you take out the geopolitical border, this is still a regional wine and quite exciting. So these are just a couple examples I just had at arm's reach to show you that this transparency is happening. We are seeing it on the bottle, so that people know what they are getting. It will not be automatic when people see crafted in BC to know exactly what that means, and that's why we're having this session. That's why we have you all here, to help us get the word out so people know what these wines are. And the thing is that, like I said at the beginning, they're really exciting. All of these winemakers here and so many others that I've talked to, when they were going down and getting their fruit and coming back and playing, it was just, you were all like, kids in a candy store, being able to play with all of this. And so this is really kind of a fun, exciting time. And who doesn't want to tell that story? That Sev, where did you go? What fruit did you find? What did you make? And what can we expect?
So yeah, so we when we were finally authorized to go and get those grapes, we had made some attempt to contact some growers down in Washington, and we chose to go through different growers in different AVAs to try and have different characteristics. So we went through the Waluki slope, we went through Red Mountain, and then Horse Heaven Hills, and then we brought grapes and juice to through the border from those different places. So basically what we did is, like I said, we brought some Cinsault and then played for, so we have a Cinsault Rosé coming up, super good. When I tasted it before bottling, I just like, okay, mental note, I have to buy some case before it's gone because it's so good. And we're going to do a little Cinsault red, and then as I mentioned, we bought a little bit of Grenache and Mourvèdre as well to blend in with some Syrah that we also going to do one single Syrah. So a bunch of different varietals. The way it's going to look for us is we've always been very honest with what we put in the wine. It's been reflected on our labels. And so what we're going to do, we're going to have a little stamp on the front label that says Washington Edition. And with all the normal information like we usually put for the Le Vieux Pain, and then La Stella, same thing. We're going to do a Washington Edition stamp, and on the back label, we're rewriting the story and then telling where the grapes are coming from, which state, which AVAs, and yeah. So we didn't use the word AVA properly because there was a lot of technical, legal aspect. Nobody was really clear about what to do, so we chose to opt for naming the states and the region, and yeah. So they're all going to be released April 1st, the white and the rosé. Some of the red will be bottled later in May, and the next batch, the Syrah, will age in barrels over a year, and then will be bottled next year. And we're going to have offerings of 22s and 23s because we were lucky. 23, we had about a very good crop, like it's about 75% of our crop in 23. So we have lots of 23 reds coming up on the market, and then still some 22s. So we'll have offering of both the crafted in BC and the VQA wines together this coming year in all of our channels. And we are planning on I've already done some talks with growers to secure some grapes for this year, and are actively managing our vineyards to try and produce the maximum that we can this year, and we'll full on back to 100% VQA wine hopefully this year and in for the future as well. So did I cover everything, Kurtis?
I think you did, and I just want to touch on your point of when you label things, weren't clear on elements. Like I said, regulation and policy notoriously does not move fast. However, the majority of what we needed to happen with this vintage did happen in enough time so that we could salvage these local businesses. And sometimes when bottling happened, labeling had to happen. It wasn't overly clear where you were allowed to use a state name or so on. So you will see the odd label around there that has, vineyard names. It will not say BC. Vineyard names, it might not have a state with some producers, but those ones, will be sold with that extra information on cards or on QR codes on the back to get that story out as much as possible. I can tell you, having seen all of this labeling has been done over the last few months in good faith and adhering to policy as we knew it, as it evolved. And so you'll see that everyone, just those two examples I showed are a little bit different from another, but they all in their own way are definitely clear in expressing that this is not their usual made from BC fruit wines. Charlie, what did you folks do at Corcelettes with with this program?
Yeah, so yeah, our focus again, back to 23 and our short crop there, I had already gone down in April of 24, and pre any of the government, short-term amendments that they had made, was already pretty committed to entertaining a commercial winery license program. I'm really glad that I didn't have to do that because of the, small winery administrative tolls on that. It's a little bit more complicated. But we went down early. We did 4 or 5 field trips, 5th for harvest dates down to Washington. Brett and I is our winemaker. Really to take it all in, really. We learned a lot. We got excited about visiting 8 of their AVAs. We met dozens of growers and turned over a lot of rocks with the one goal of falling in love with something. It really killed me to just simply make wine as a small winery model, and particularly from one of these little niche Similkameen producers. It really had to speak to us. So Sev, I ended up in Walook Slopes as well and fell in love with something that kind of had a bit of that Similkameen vibe to it. So we did end up getting 60 tons in total for 3 different varietals. Brought in some Chardonnay that we're pretty excited about, Syrah for rosé production, and Sauvignon Blanc. So these are all new offerings that are being labeled under a new brand called Phoenix. And so I thought it was appropriately named, kind of turning through some of these vintages, kind of develop something that was a little bit more youthful and fun, an approachable looking brand that's kind of complementing to our somewhat traditional Corcelette label series. And protects that label, that transparency that we're really trying to do. Corcelette really is all about estate grown Similkameen product. And Phoenix gives us the opportunity to kind of, entertain and explore new wine regions. So the Washington experience was positive. We really made the best of it. We learned a lot from their viticultural perspectives. In fact, in many cases, some of their small producers, small growers, I came back thinking like, I don't think we're doing enough in terms of crop protection. So there was some lessons to take home from there, and some great wines to try at the same time. So it was a positive experience. Labeling has been a little bit challenging because, we wanted to share the story, the experience that we had down there. So the use of AVAs was a hard no. Some producers, I think, have gone out and found some gray areas with some legal teams that I don't have. But there'll be some different strategies that people are using. We have gone as literal as a map visual on the back. Our wine series from Washington is called Cascadia Collection, which speaks to the geographic similarities from north to south along the Cascadia mountain range. And so all in all, the wines are actually being bottled next Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. We're pretty excited about it. Labels are downstairs. Everything's looking pretty sharp. And for us, it's exciting to be able to produce wines that, that kind of make us look outside of our own fence lines. And all in all, pretty excited to get to the market and get people's reactions and opinions, yours included.
Awesome. That's that's great. And like you said, everyone was on different timelines, and everyone's doing what they have to do and abiding by things as much as possible. It's just really great, and just how frankly, how creative you are all being in navigating this. And I'm just hearing over and over that this is just opportunity. Learning about your own vineyards and planting, and playing around with this other fruit. David Paterson, you went south, you went east with your program, and our mutual friend, the beloved Paul Pender, who is at the helm of Tawes in Ontario. This concept is not something new to you. This is something that you've actually wanted to do for a while. So I know that that your heart was in this, maybe even a little bit more than others may have in approaching this.
Sure. So, well, I mean, first and foremost, we're a BC winery, and we would love to have just been able to remain so. But, after that 2019 winter, we started for the first time buying grapes from elsewhere outside our estate. We're kind of forced to remain financially sustainable. And so we created the Further Afield series, where we made some Cabernet Franc and some Rosé from Cabernet Franc and some Syrah. And now we've just gone a little bit further afield than the Further Afield series in needing to go outside the province. So when I looked at this as an opportunity, the first thing that came to mind was something Paul Pender of Tours and I had discussed many years ago at a Chardonnay conference about trying to bring a cross-Canada perspective to Riesling. And so we talked a lot about how we would get across these cross-provincial barriers and be able to do this, either a blend of BC and Ontario or single vineyard Ontario out here. That never really came to fruition with the need for a commercial license, etc. But it's always been on my mind. I mean, I really like Niagara Riesling. It's the same 21B clone, the Weiss clone that we have on our site. And they have some of these older plantings out there that we have here as well. So to me, it really made sense not to go to Washington, which is more planted in Alsatian clones, and to go out to Niagara for my Riesling and use the same clonal selection, and also have a bit of a cross-Canada story to what we're doing. So it was quite important to me to still make some Canadian wine and not just the US. So I went to Niagara for Riesling, got 2 amazing single vineyards through my current vineyard manager, Scott Woody, who had been working out there for the last 10 years. He had a lot of great contacts, and also contacts through being out there multiple times over the last 10 years. And then we also found an amazing single vineyard of 15 different clones of Chardonnay, a real Chardonnay geek grower in Mio Vineyard out in Niagara, which we couldn't say no to. So we made some Chardonnay out of that. So it's us and Thomas Batchelder, and we're in talks with Thomas about how maybe we can do some cross-promotional things with these single vineyards out of Niagara and make it a very Canadian story. And then we went down to Oregon. So I did vintage in Oregon in 2007 at a wonderful place called Archery Summit. And at that stage, the viticulturist Lee Bartholomew is a wonderful biodynamic grower. She now heads up a very large custom viticultural company. So she was my first call. And she told me that the Looney Vineyard, which I'd worked with in 2007, was actually up for grabs for the first time in 22 years. And so I said immediately, I will take the whole vineyard. And so that the Looney Vineyard Rosé, which I have right here, which hopefully you can see. Maybe it's blurring it out. Anyway, it is a single vineyard rosé from these really old Pinot Noir vines in Ribbon Ridge. We've named the vineyard, and we've named Oregon. We're not allowed to use Willamette Valley or Ribbon Ridge or Yamhill Carlton, any of those kinds of sub-AVAs or AVAs. And then we thought, well, we don't have enough Chardonnay to bring our Bear Chardonnay, which is a big part of our white portfolio, more Chablis, less oak style of Chardonnay, some stainless steel component. What's Oregon known for? They're really known for Pinot Gris. So we've made the first ever Pinot Gris that Tantalus has ever made from 1985 plantings of own-rooted organic Pinot Gris up in that same area that we got the Pinot Noir from. Beautiful vineyard. Again, Lee Bartholomew put me onto that. Very well-known vineyard down there. And we made it basically in the same style as we would make our Bear Chardonnay. So a lot of wild barrel fermentation and a little bit of stainless steel fermentation as well. And it's lovely and fresh, and we'll hit the market like everyone else on April 1st. The red and the Chardonnay are in barrel doing Malo at the moment, and will come onto the market sometime around this time next year. So yeah, really excited about, the fact that, okay, we don't have any BC wine, but now we're allowed to do this. Let's go play with some really fun fruit and still bring really good quality wines to market and have some fun with it. So yeah, it's been really fun.
Stoked. Derek, did all of the brands, the BC brands with Arterra, take part in the program, or what did you guys do?
Not all the brands. We tried to leave, for the most part, some of the Laughingstock, Coleman brands as there. We have fruit. We have stuff in barrel that will remain 100% BQA. Just more we had to look at to source or faster moving whites, rosés, kind of like everyone in the industry that you see. So it was one of those ones again where it's like you're doing a harvest somewhere else in the world, but in your own backyard, which is kind of fun. It's like a Roman winemaker. I did multiple car rides and hundreds of thousands of kilometers of driving up and down Washington. So for us at Artera, we tried to look at where could we source to maintain quality. That was the big important factor, is we want the quality as good or better kind of messaging, and then also what could we do to make it as Canadian as possible. So we did go to Ontario as well for some of our fruit juice, which was great. Like Dave says, they have if you're looking for some rosé or some sparkling base, Ontario has great wines out there. So, we tried to rely on that as well, just to, try to make it a Canadian product. But, rules and labeling, as everyone's mentioned, is difficult and kind of trickier, even though you're in your own country with the VQA and you can't use any of Ontario or BC. So, again, the labels will, like everyone's saying, will be clearly marked. And then we've, tried to find some tremendous quality down in Washington, some of the same places that everyone else went, Red Mountain, Horsehaven Hills and around. And as Charlie said, you drive around, you look at the vineyards, you're like, they're doing different practices than we are. Is there anything that we can learn from them? Talk to growers, how can we bring stuff back, and just share knowledge with some of the growers in Washington and compare practices. So we're excited. A lot of our wines, the rosés and the whites will be bottled. Well, some are already bottled, some are bottling this week, some are next week. And the aim is to be out like everyone else April 1st and to showcase. And, from what I've seen from the wines that we've made and stuff, they're great quality, fantastic. And then the goal is to get back to VQA as soon as we can.
Yeah, it's as you mentioned, and that's one thing that I'm really impressed with, and I think that will surprise a lot of people, is the premium fruit and the premium AVAs and sub GIs, in Ontario, that the fruit has been coming from, Horsehaven Hills, down south and all of that, and so it shows that we are not doing the bare minimum for these local wines. We are really swinging for the fences and clearing them. Mr. Bartier, what did you do for the program?
Yeah. Well, like everybody, I found my vineyard sources and I have a lot of good friends down in Washington, and they sent me in the correct direction. I ended up buying fruit from a few different vineyards, but all from the same company that they own, common ownership. And I was lucky. They had a pressing facility down there. So, we contracted the fruit and we contracted them to also press it for us, and they cold settled it and sent it up to us as juice, which was fantastic because it was a quick trip. It took about 6 hours to get from the pressing facility to us. And it left there at about 2 degrees Celsius. It got to us at 3 degrees Celsius. So nice and fresh, absolutely pristine. Speaking of pristine, the landscapes down there, the vineyards are beautiful. And, you've got volcanoes off, these Cascade volcanoes that are snow-capped off in the distance in August. And they're just so beautiful. We ended up identifying our wine. We wanted to be opportunistic. We're a small winery, but we do have a bit of a brand following. So we did want people to understand that it was from the Bartier Brothers winery. However, we also wanted to make sure that it was different in the sense that it was presented as a different wine. And we do have a different label. And in keeping with, how I saw the vineyards, we used the brand name Pristine. So let's see if we can get a focus in on this or not.
You did it for a split second. We got that nice little teaser there.
Is that right? Yeah, you're not going to get it. Anyways, it does say it's a Bartier Brothers Pristine wines. And it does on the bottom here, it looks a bit too fuzzy right now, but it does say grown in Washington. That was important to us to say that. On the legalities, it does say that we have that this is imported wine made from imported ingredients. We do want people to know where the wine came from. We can put the AVA on the back label or on any label. So what we've done instead is we've used a QR code on the back label that will take people to way more information than you ever want to know. It'll put you to sleep. So that's what we have, and it's all bottled. I think that we'll probably do a bit of, although we'll take a massive hit on price on it, we'll probably do a soft release of it in the next couple of weeks, prior to the April 1st, just because a lot of people have shown a lot of interest in it, and I'm very happy with them. These are good wines. The vineyards are just, they know what they're doing down there. I learned a lot.
Well, we all look forward to taking advantage of you taking a hit on price. So thank you from all of us for that. Lauren, so as mentioned, Paints of the Rock Estate Winery is not taking part of the program. However, you put your hand up to get some skin in the game, to be, part of the task force for this program. So, and
I actually wasn't a
to,
part of the task force. I
okay,
joined the board, but I joined the board of
sorry,
Wine
you're part of
Growers BC.
board, right?
And so the task force had reported into the board, and then it was our decision. Well, we had to put forward recommendations from there on behalf of wine growers. So I was a part of that conversation.
Right. Okay. Yes. Thank you very much for clarifying that. I know one thing for sure: you have been already a big vocal champion
Yeah.
of this program, even though you're not involved with it. Why? Why is this something that you're really getting behind and putting your neck out for?
I think there's a couple reasons. One, okay, so it wasn't a fit. The program wasn't a fit for Painted Rock. It wasn't a fit for what my family's vision and what we, again, we had a live plant, so we weren't looking at a 4 or 5 year turnaround thing. We had 1 year gap. It was going to be okay for Painted Rock. What's not going to be okay for Painted Rock is if the entire industry is gone. If the rest of the wineries can't survive this financial crisis, it's not dissimilar to when I do export work or my dad does. He's been a big part of taking our brand globally. And you don't want to go one brand. You want to grow as a region. And if our region suffers, we all suffer. So again, rising tides. And I think in terms of getting involved in and supporting Crafted in BC, the reason I wanted to throw my weight behind it, or whatever weight I had, was because we were a really big part, my dad was, about changing cellared in Canada and changing that verbiage, and we know how important it is in terms of differentiating what is Canadian wines and what aren't Canadian wines. And it sounds counterintuitive. I saw the question in there. Someone was sensitive to the idea that this might compromise that. I think what I was more fearful of was not protecting VQA and protecting the wines that are still 100% BC, and having wines intermingled and not having a category to call it, not being able to highlight the wonderful things that everyone here on this panel is doing, but also separately identifying the 100% BC wines. I thought it was really important that we, have this ability to have shelving recommendations like Laura showed at the beginning, the ability to have a category. And that's where it came back to the recommendations that had come from the task group. The United Industry had participated, and they had come up with the words Crafted in BC. And as a new board member who had just joined, it wasn't my, place to jump in and go, well, I should change and put my personal thoughts on it. There's a brand that was, by everyone in the room had been decided upon that this was the most fitting. It was, I felt my responsibility to go, we need a category. This has been decided. Let's move forward and come up with a strategy. Let's make sure our team at Wine Growers and Laura and the wonderful people doing all communications, that they have a message to share. Otherwise, there's going to be confusion, and confusion is what I want to avoid. That was my priority.
Excellent. Thank you
Does that make sense?
for that. It very much does. And, we hope that as much as possible people do embrace crafted in BC, and hopefully this program will has kind of illuminated the why behind it and what the goals are, and at the same time, what is important is that these stories are being told, and that we are all being clear and transparent and excited about this and supporting local, again, particularly more than ever. These are wines, made by BC producers. They are crafted in BC wines, and as you see, it's just a lot of fun, and that kind of wouldn't necessarily paint broadly the entire 2024 story. But what we get to do now is tell the story of these wineries, tell the story of these wines, while still embracing BCVQA, 100% BC wines, and flying that flag, which will, that's a perennial thing that goes on and on. But, for now, this is the program. Laura has shared the tools for all of us. Wine Growers is always there for guidance and advice. We all have local wineries that we love supporting. Ask them what they want. Ask Sev, how she wants the story told, how she wants it differentiated when you are, going to be picking up her senso or something else that she's making. This is just a really exciting time, and it's up to all of us, myself included, as sommeliers, as retailers, as media, to share what's going on and why it's important, and how this is supporting our economy. This is supporting local, and ensuring the strength of our industry. Laura, final thoughts?
Okay, thank you so much, Kurtis, and thank you to all of our panelists and everyone joining us today. As I mentioned, a link of the recording of this webinar will be shared with all participants, and please check out the Crafted in BC Toolkit on winebc.com. I'll include a link in that with the recording as well, and the communications that goes out to everyone. And I just wanted to leave everyone with a reminder that April is BC Wine Month. This April is the 8th annual BC Wine Month. I can't believe how quickly time flies. I remember launching April BC Wine Month in 2018. So no better time to support and celebrate local, taste and try new BC wines this spring. Visit local wineries, see firsthand what's happening in the vineyards. It's a very exciting time in the BC wine industry right now, and it's an exciting time to get out there and talk with the wineries and see what's happening and visit the vineyards, see what's going on. So thank you again to everyone. Have a great day. Have a great spring, and we'll see you out in wine country.
Thanks so much, everyone.
Bye.